Thanks everyone for joining me, and I'm excited to have a conversation with Rachel, who's joining me, I believe, from Missouri today.
Correct?
Good. And we're going to talk about traveling. I just love to have conversations about why we fall in love with travel,
Yes.
where we find people to travel with, all of it. So, welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, April.
Sure. So, what's your earliest remembrance of travel? Was it
Oh,
something that your parents kind of nurtured in you, or was it something you kind of discovered on your own, or
absolutely. Grew up traveling. My first overseas trip, I was about 6 weeks old.
oh my goodness.
So, yeah, my dad is from the UK and my mom is from the US. So, automatically we were set up for just a certain amount. I mean, I guess some people don't, but
Yeah.
we traveled a lot. Like my family and my parents always made a point to take vacation. So we went to England a lot growing up, but also, especially like my dad being from the UK, like this kind of like, let's go explore the States. And my mom grew up traveling a lot. Like she lived in Australia as a kid and
Oh my
Algeria
gosh.
and London, which is where she met my dad, because her parents traveled and took them when they had work trips and
Yeah.
stuff, they would go. And yeah, my dad traveled. My dad, this is totally wild. My dad used to smuggle Bibles into Soviet Union countries that you
Did
weren't
he?
allowed to have
Oh
a Bible.
my gosh.
So he has travel stories that surpass my own on so many levels. Um, so yeah, so we grew up traveling, me and my siblings with my parents, and um, yeah, just the love of all the places, all the experiences, all the cultures, and just an awareness of like you live in a culture and then you go see this other culture, and it's like,
Yeah.
how cool is it to see this other culture? Like, just so fun. Yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
that's
awesome. Because
lots of memories.
yeah, but you're one of those kids I was always jealous of. Summertime
Yes,
comes and you come back from your summer adventures and you're like, you
right.
have new
We did this.
foods and you have new clothes maybe from that place and the
Yeah.
stories. So, yeah, awesome. That
Yes,
is
we loved it.
fabulous.
We loved it. Absolutely.
So, do you have favorite places that you like to go back to now?
Oh, yes, absolutely. One of probably my most memorable experiences. So, because my dad has all this family back in England, particularly in England, we would go back. And when my granddad passed, so my dad's dad, which of course was very sad, but my parents were like,
Yeah.
we're gonna stay for like 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And so we were there for about 2 months and we got a pass to the English Heritage and we went all over England. I think we hit Wales and Scotland as well. And just we went to all these historic sites and we'd already, been visiting these historic amazing places every time we would go, especially when you go to parts of Europe and it's just so rich with
Yes.
this old history, whereas in the US, we don't have monuments. Like when you look at First Peoples, they don't always have as much, they didn't have these big structures like the castles
Right.
in England, of course.
Right.
So we would go visit those every time we went to England. But this trip, we just went all over. And one of the places that really sticks out in my memory is Belsey Hall, which
Mhm.
I don't remember when it was built. Um, and the structure, like the house, it feels like it was more like when people were coming into money that hadn't been landed gentry, but are starting to build these places. But the gardens are what blew my mind because it literally felt like walking down this path. At any moment, I am going to step into this other world.
Oh, wow.
And it was one of the most amazing experiences. And if anybody who loves Narnia or fantasy,
Yeah.
like it literally felt like around the next bend, you will literally leave this plane of existence and
Right.
enter this other one. It was so amazing. And then, of course, growing up, so my dad's from Chesterfield, England, which has the Crooked Spire. And it's this, so obviously lots of churches and chapels and all
Yeah.
the things. And so what they think happened is that maybe the wood was a little green. And of course, they've got lead slates
Oh,
on it. So they think maybe it warped because of that. They think it could be the wind, but it's a very famous structure and it's not actually attached. It's like just sitting. It's so heavy. It's
Oh
just
my
sitting on the
gosh.
top. So going there always feels very nostalgic for me. And then like there's so many places around where my family, we would go to Bakewell, we would go to Matlock Bath, we would get like all these little places that if you live there, it kind of just feels run of the mill, just like anywhere you live all the time. You can,
Yeah.
even if you enjoy it, you can kind of
Oh yeah, you
get
get
used to it.
right, right.
But for us, it was like, oh yeah, we want to go back here and we want to go get this and we want to go get a sausage roll and we want to go eat this and
Yeah.
eat that. And so lots and lots of memories there. Other places, I have so many places I love. I lived in France
Oh wow.
and I had done some study there before I did my master's over there. And then lived there again when I was married. I'm since unmarried, but so lived in the South mostly, but Annecy, which is so there's Geneva and it's a little bit south, but
Mhm.
in France. And they call it the Little Venice
Oh
because of the
wow.
canals and just this old part of the city that's just so beautiful. And again, it feels like you've kind of been whisked into this other world with the beauty. And I actually have not been to Venice, so I can't compare.
Right.
But for me, it was amazing. And then I love so many places in southern France. Like, yeah, France definitely stole part of my heart over the years. Um, and then I did Australia. I've been to Australia twice.
Oh wow, that's a long flight
It
too.
is a very long flight. And I did it the second time I did it, I went with my mom because she had lived there. And took my twins. I have boy girl twins.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a long flight. I'm glad I wasn't going to do it without some help. So my mom was a great choice for that. And it was just amazing to be there. We had some friends there and we stayed near the beach
Oh
and
nice.
just in southern Australia, so in Victoria and in the place that we were at is it's near Fish Creek, which is like 1,000 people. This little tiny like
Oh yeah.
podunk Australian town. There's an author there though. It's Allison. I can't remember her last name now. It's just gone from my head. She wrote No Need the Pony. And
Oh.
that's where she's from. And my friends live there and Warita Bay. It's this just beautiful experience. So those are all places that I love to go back. But I'm also like, but I want to also check out new places. So it's
Right. I
this
know.
hard thing of going to some place that's familiar versus a new place. And I like when I travel, I'm a big fan of going to a spot and just kind of getting to stay there and absorb
Right.
the culture, absorb the people, absorb just whatever it is. Um, I love to just get to do that as opposed to I did a trip one time with one of my friends who's a French teacher and she's like, "Hey, I'm going to be in Europe. Her mom's in Belgium. And she's like, if something happens, I'm going to go see my mom. I want somebody else who can kind of lead the trip for me. So she had me come because I speak French and a little bit of Spanish.
Yeah.
And so it was like London, Paris, and Barcelona.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, all places I had been, but with this group. And it was like go, 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 go every day, like cramming as much stuff. And I very quickly realized that is not how I like to travel. I was like, I did it. It was a great experience. But I was like, not one I'm eager to repeat.
Right. I
Yeah.
just did that. It was like I just came back from that. It was like I was excited to go to all these places,
Yes.
and the way it fell out was like, oh, well, just the way dates were lining up. So, yeah, but by the end of it, I'm like, I don't want to see another city or church or historical town for a
Right.
while. It was just too much. And I know it was my
Yeah.
fault, but see, I learned that now. Like,
Yeah. Now you know. Now and it's
right?
and I love that there are people who they really like that. They like the
Yeah,
constant go, go, go experience. I don't. Like I am like, can I have a beach
right.
and a book and
Right.
nobody else around me? Like at least for a few days, where some people I know when we talk about they're like, oh, I can't stand to go on vacation and do nothing.
Yeah.
and they just want all the activities and experiences, which I just don't. I'm like, I want to savor it and take
Yeah.
my time and be like, okay, this, I want to soak up this little French town. Um,
Right.
so yeah, that's kind
So,
of the way I tend to travel. So
yeah, no, I love it. So how's it been traveling with your kids? How early did you take them on their first trip?
Yes. So I tell you what, I barely left the house when they were newborns. Like it was very intense. Like
Yes, especially having
any,
two.
yes, any number of children is a lot, but especially you have one that's not sleeping like that. Yeah, I'm like, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Is like not sleeping is miserable. So I actually almost felt like I was slacking because I had not taken them very many places. I can't remember if they were 3 or 4. I took them to Florida with my parents. So, it's cool because my parents and I, most of my siblings, we kind of vacation at a similar pace.
Oh,
And
nice.
because we've all been traveling together for so long, I think that there's a certain amount of like, oh, we know Rachel just wants to go chill at the beach, but we want to go do this, and that's fine. Like, there's a lot of good communication. So my parents, I was like, okay, I want to take them on a flight, but I don't want to do changes. So it was like, where can we go that's a direct flight?
Right.
And found flights to Florida, found a beach spot, and it was like, okay, we can go here, we can get off the plane, we go here, done, staying. We're not
Yes.
going anywhere, we're not doing anything complex. And it was great. Like my kids loved the sand. You would have just It was just like, wow, this is amazing. They loved it. And then they were 5 when we did the Australia trip.
Right, that's
And
right.
yeah, they did great. I was definitely nervous about it was 3 flights
Right.
and it's a long flight. And like I was like being in international airports with 2 cute little children who are kind of doing their own little thing. I
Right.
was like, I can't do this on my own. So that's when I talked to my mom about it. And she was like, yes, I would love to go. So we went together and it just felt so much safer because like you can go to the bathroom
Right. Yes,
and
exactly.
not worry that whatever. Or like, okay, because like if I went by myself, it would have been like, okay, you're gonna go to the bathroom and you're gonna take both kids in, but you can't get the bags in with you
I know. Right,
into the
into the
stall.
stall. Right.
With even if I'm in even if I'm using the accessibility one, like even then, it's like, okay, well, can I get all of our bags and the children and
I
this into
know.
the spot?
Right. Right.
So, and it made it so much easier because then like one adult goes with one kid, one goes with the other.
Yeah.
Um, but I am about to do, actually, we did Mexico. We did Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, wow.
Um, when did we do that? I want to say we did it in 2022. So they were about 8-ish, I guess. We did that, but I was meeting up with a girlfriend, so we're staying at a friend's house. So I wasn't navigating, and my I don't speak very much Spanish. So that I think it would have been more intimidating if I'd been like having to find my own place to stay and not
Yeah.
knowing the city. Like that tends to make me a little nervous. But being with somebody who knew the city, who knew these places and who speaks fluent Spanish, like that was great because it was like, okay, she's kind of helping us navigate all the things. But this year we are going to France
Oh,
and
wow.
it's just the 3 of us. So it's just me and the kids, me and the twins. And I speak French fluently and I speak to them. We speak French.
Oh,
They
nice. Oh,
reply a lot in English, but I think that it'll be great because they'll pick it up fast.
yes.
But I don't think I would have tried an international trip any sooner than this. Like they're 10, they're more self-aware, they're
Right.
paying attention. We live in the Midwest, we're in a very safe area. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to work with them to make sure that they are
Yeah.
paying attention to their bags, to their things. Like this is a travel tip that I'm sure you're very familiar with when you're in a group. Like just turn your bags inwards where the zippers are not facing out. Like if you
Right.
corral the bags, just corral them together with the zips and stuff on the inside. Don't leave the handles where it's easier to grab them or something. Like
Right.
I've had friends who traveled and had some of their things stolen, and that's scary and upsetting. And
Yeah.
you don't ever want to think that's going to happen, but it does. And so just kind of preparing. So I'm like working on that, but we are not doing Paris. We're going to fly into the south where I have lots of friends around.
Oh, good.
And I feel very comfortable in southern France because I lived there for about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm excited for that. And I'm like, ooh, it's gonna be great to do that. And I thought like I said, I don't think I would have been comfortable enough to try it before this. So
No, and those are
yes.
good tips for parents too, like especially single parents, like thinking
Yes.
through where to go, what their comfort level is, where,
Very
because
much so.
if you throw in like if you have to rent a car or you're going to a place that you're not familiar with, now you have so many areas of
Absolutely.
uncertainty. It's like
Yeah.
too overwhelming.
Yeah. And it definitely like going to Mexico, I tend to be a little hesitant about going places that I don't know, even on my own. Like going, I went to New Orleans for a wedding, but I went by myself, and I went and explored the city. But I was very aware. I was like, this is uncomfortable for me
Yeah.
to explore a place that I don't know. And it's not like I had friends who had given me a bunch of recommendations and
Mm.
said, "Hey, watch out for this area or go to this area and this is safe." And I just didn't have that kind of expectation
Right.
set for me. Maybe that's part of it. But I still got out there and did it. But it was just like, oh, I would have been more relaxed if there'd just been another person with me, even if they had never been there.
Right. Right.
Just that kind of like, hey, somebody else is kind of keeping an eye as well as you, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, and
that makes a
unfortunately, I
difference.
think even even today as women, I just think, our
Yeah.
DNA is baked like being alone in even in the
Be
States.
careful.
I mean, you just got to be
Absolutely.
careful and it's
Yes.
hard to know who to trust or you don't want to look lost or confused. And so,
Yes, exactly.
and
Well, and
even with the cell phones, I mean, you pull over and because I've been in different cities on the
yeah,
recent trip, and even with my dad, we kind of get over to the side, so to speak, and you pull open a map. All of a sudden, it's like all eyes
you're
are on you.
advertising.
You're
You're
advertising.
advertising. Like, I don't
Exactly.
know where I'm at. I don't
Right.
know what I'm doing. Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's such
it's
a good point.
yeah.
And I think it's also with the cell phone comment, like, okay, even though I could call somebody, if if I were by myself in New Orleans, I mean, I had friends and family there, but they weren't like my close friends, so they were all like prepping for the wedding and
Yeah.
stuff. So it's like, even if I could call somebody, what are you gonna do?
Right. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
what they're not gonna come get you. I mean,
Yeah.
it depends on how serious, obviously, things are, but yeah, because it's like if I had been in Mexico without my girlfriend,
Right. Yeah.
I have some friends in Mexico, but none of them were in the same city except for her. So what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And if you're adventuring on your own, um, like you're exploring something completely new, yeah, that's definitely something to think about. And just being sometimes like I have never tried to hide the fact that I'm American. Um, but you can also be a little bit more of a target sometimes because there's these perceptions of Americans and who they are and
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
that can draw people can be either more drawn to you or be more aggressive to you or all these different reactions that people have.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you're interacting with this whole other culture and they don't know what
No.
you're like and who knows how else they've been treated and yeah,
Right. Exactly. Well,
yeah,
and even in the United States, there's different places that you go, and people,
yes,
given the climate and things that are happening, people, they're desperate. They need X or Y, and if you're just
yeah,
in the wrong place, wrong time, so it's hard. I think it's gotten harder to enjoy kind of traveling, especially in cities by yourself, because you're having to
yes,
be so aware when you're alone
yes,
that you
I
can't
agree.
as much enjoy the experience.
Yeah, I was definitely on the most recent trip I did like by myself was New Orleans and I was definitely far more conscious of like, oh, I don't know where to stand to go look at my cell phone to look
Yeah.
at a map. Like I was
Right.
just pulling it up on my phone, but it was like I clearly don't know where I'm at, like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I looked around and I was like, this is probably not the spot for you to stop. So it was
Right.
like, I'm gonna go a little bit further and then I'm gonna stop. And
Right.
I don't, not that I even thought anything would happen, but it's that unknown factor of, okay, how safe is this actually?
Yeah.
And you don't know. You don't
No.
know. And like you said, as a woman, it's just higher risk.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I really do. So talk about traveling with other people. I know before we got on the call, I
Yes.
think it's important to choose the right travel partner, whether,
Yeah.
you and I have both expressed like we're not, there are people, and I applaud women that are out there solo traveling. So high five
Yes.
to you ladies. But I'm kind of like you, Rachel. I prefer to go with someone or even a small group. So
Yeah.
finding someone that's a good travel partner isn't always the friend that you're having coffee or drinks with in our
Yes.
hometown.
Yes, agreed. Well, and I think it's a really important conversation to have before you go because I know one of the things that happened for me is like when I lived in France, I would host people. Sorry, this
Oh
ear thing
yeah.
just dropped. So people would come visit me, and then it would be like, "Oh, you you just ate all my food
Oh no,
and
yeah.
didn't didn't offer to buy any for me." And of course we were younger,
Right,
college
right.
age, young kids, like definitely a little bit different. And because my siblings and we've traveled a lot, we've lived in other countries, um we're far more aware of it, and we've all kind of had that experience, like where one friend joined us and we're suddenly like, "Oh, you do not have the same travel etiquette that we do." And it was
Right.
like, I don't know how comfortable I am to invite you to stay with my friends because I don't know how you're going to carry yourself. And
Yeah.
like, I can't invite you to come, you come eat all my food. Like, what are you going to do at my friend's house?
Yeah.
Like, so I think finding people, like thinking about like, well, do you like to, just like I said earlier, like, do you want to go just chill at the beach? Do you want to just go sit at those little cafes and just observe? Or are you wanting to go, I have a cousin of mine who we're both single and he loves to travel, do all these things, but I'm like, I'm aware that he likes to like do an activity almost every single
Oh yeah.
day.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't necessarily want to spend the money on some of those things. Like, I think they're cool. And if I were making way more money than I am, then I would probably be like, sure, we'll go paraglide. Sure, I'll go do
Right.
this. Sure, I'll do this. Sure. But I'm like, with the kids, I'm like, I would rather be in like maybe two places, stay at the same place. I don't want to move. I don't want to pack up my stuff and haul
Yes.
them because I'm packing for three people.
Right.
So thinking about like who's going to be able to partner with you. So my mom has been a great travel partner. We do little trips to South Missouri together
Oh
with
nice.
the kids. Yeah. And like she will help. She's like, "Well, I'll help make sure that we got this food. I'll help make sure the kids did this." And I'm still responsible. I mean, the kids are still my responsibility.
Oh yeah.
But she'll step in. She'll be like, "Hey, you guys need to go ahead and start getting your PJs on. Like your mom's finishing up this or whatever." And just that, e- especially if you have kids, there's just so much work that goes into kids.
Right.
So then you're like, okay, I could stay home and this would be less work, but now I'm here. And I think that's the difference between like a trip and a vacation. Like, are you just doing a trip? Or are you just packing your stuff over and over? And I don't want to pack it over and over. I want to stay, let them unpack, let them kind of settle. And then we only have one day where we're repacking.
Right.
So having somebody who gets that and traveling with somebody who is like, hey, I want to move at that same pace, or, I really don't like that. Okay, you want to go every day? That's fine. I'm probably not the person to travel with you. That's
Right.
probably that's just probably all there is to it. And then also looking at how do you handle conflict?
Yes.
How do you handle when something goes wrong? What do you do if your hotel is nasty? What do you do if the car you rented has a problem and you're in the middle of nowhere? And like, how do you, like, how they handle those things can make a big difference. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, we don't have the same perspective on this. So
Right. Yes.
it's a big thing, I think,
I think it
for sure.
is, and having a conversation too, because
Yes.
I've been in groups where, one person can be, just their reaction to things, being in a
Yes.
new place, or how they even, you're at a restaurant and, there are those people that like, well, I don't want this or I need that changed. And in some
Yeah.
countries, you can see the waiter is just kind of
Like,
looking like,
no.
especially France. I'll use France, not to call out
Yeah.
France, but, certain restaurants, it's just, kind of keep that to a minimum, or
Yeah.
not just the attitude a little bit. And so then you're
And
sitting there cringing like, ugh.
well, and it's also that, like you said, the attitude. Like, is it like, okay, so for me, I'm actually one of the things I'm nervous about is I didn't have a gluten allergy and now I do.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and I'm like, I'm going to the land
I
of
know.
bread.
Yes.
And I'm just like, I don't know what this is going to look like because I always ate gluten and it was not a problem. And now it is. Now I'll be up all night and I'll be in so much pain and like
Yes.
all these other things. So I'm like, ooh, I don't know. And I've heard people say that it depends on whether it's been the modified wheat and all of this and that they ate certain foods in other countries and they were okay. And I'm like, I don't know if I will be.
Right,
I don't
right.
know. So then it's like, okay, so how do you minimize that? But also I'm like, okay, well, my attitude is going to show like I recognize this as an inconvenience and I really respect that. Here's what I need to do, as opposed to just that entitlement expectation of, well,
Yeah,
of course, you're going to do exactly what I need.
right.
But I wouldn't do that in the States either. Like
No, I know. But yeah.
culturally, like some places, it's like that's, we had an exchange student from Indonesia. Um,
Oh.
and he would always try to bribe me to do his homework, to do these things, to do,
Oh my gosh.
and it's just such a part of their culture. Like at least where he grew up, bribing is just part of the culture.
Oh
It was
wow.
very normal. Whereas, like around where I'm at, like bribing is looked very down
Yeah,
upon.
right.
It's
Yeah.
like,
We
this
will.
is not okay.
Yeah, exactly. Oh dear.
Yeah. So I totally get it. Like, and you don't always know the culture you're going into, at least with French culture, even though I've been out of it, like I haven't been actively in it, which of course culture shifts.
Yeah, things
Um,
change.
but it's also a culture that I'm far more familiar with, where I'm relatively comfortable and I speak the language, which makes a big
Right,
difference.
that
Like
helps
I
a
speak
lot.
it, I speak it well. So that definitely helps. And I would say to anyone who's thinking of going to France, um, learn a few phrases, even if
Yes.
you don't have to be fluent, be respectful, be kind. And I will say, this is one question I always ask people when they talk about like Paris and they're like, well, Parisians and whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, if somebody told you that they came to the States and the only place they went was New York City or Miami or LA,
Right.
would you say that that's representative of the rest of the country?
Right.
No. They're like
No.
their own thing. They're their
Right.
own unique, amazing experience. But they're not representative of the rest of the US. And I'm like, that's kind of like Paris. Parts of Paris are
Yeah.
like that. Like,
Right.
and you just have to imagine they see so many different people. And the more respectful and kind you can be, even if they're having a bad day, don't let it phase you. Just be like, okay, all right. Try saying a few words. They'll probably
Oh
very
yeah.
quickly switch to English for you and be like, please stop torturing me with your
Right.
pronunciation. But at least you've made that effort and it kind of helps alleviate some of that like entitlement sensation that they have from like, well, you just expect me,
Right. Oh,
even though they probably all do speak English.
but I do completely agree. Any country you're gonna plan to go to, try to learn some of the words and at least try to
Yeah.
make that effort, stumble through the first introductions or the, whatever, because
Yes.
I
The
think
hellos, the whatever.
that goes miles. At least you're making an effort to
Yes.
try to, because exactly. I mean, we're fortunate being from, English is now basically the worldwide
Yeah.
language.
Very
Everybody's
fortunate.
learning it, and we are super fortunate, but
Yeah.
take that into account and just try to.
Yes. Well, and I think the phrases I would say would be, hello, can you help me? Please, thank you.
Yes.
I'm like, if you don't know anything else, and I, it's obviously nice if you can ask for the bathroom, but I would say those other phrases are more important as far as like connection.
Right.
Um, they'll probably recognize the urgency on your face.
Right,
You're looking
exactly.
desperate for a
Right,
toilet.
right. Well, even like
Um,
the staff, like you talked about, like at hotels, I noticed like
yeah.
you leave your hotel room in the morning and someone is in the hall that's going to be cleaning your room. Just that simple, like try to say good morning
Thank
or
you. Good
thank
morning.
you
Yeah.
or, you know,
Yeah.
hi, hello, something in their language. And you can see
Yeah.
the smile come across their face. I mean,
Yes.
just that appreciation. And again, I think that switches the whole perspective a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and it's that connection. It's looking for the, even if it's just that split second, that one little tiny moment, but it's just a moment of connection, of recognizing there's another human. We don't speak the same language. We don't live in the same culture, but you're valuable.
Yeah,
Just being you is valuable. And
right.
we can communicate. You can communicate that with just a smile. Although I
Oh, yeah.
realize there's some cultures where eye contact and a smile may not be appropriate. But like you might be soliciting something else you didn't know, but
Right.
that's what I've always been paranoid about. I'm like, I don't know much about this culture. Is this safe for me to be making eye contact with
Right. Oh,
people?
yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And um yeah, I had a thought and it flitted away, so never
Oh,
mind.
no. I was just thinking again, like other, I think for relationships, I think it's a good test is to travel, especially if you love to travel yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I actually, so I had a girlfriend of mine, she and I were talking about, or she takes her family, they usually do trips, but she was talking to me about the difference between how her husband likes to travel and how she likes to travel. And I was like, wow, that is like, he's the person who wants to go, go, go. He wants to do like 3 new places in 3 days. She's like, I want to go for like 3 weeks and just stay in the same place. And I was like, that would be really hard. And I think I would be inclined to say, okay, well, we can live together and love each other very much, but I will be traveling with this group of friends
Right.
instead.
Yes, exactly. I
Yeah.
think that's a good point. I know for myself, it's like, and I think I found with Australian women,
Mm,
especially like it's very normal in their relationships with, their marriages that it's okay that the husband goes and takes his own vacation
yeah.
and the women go and do whatever vacation they want. I've met many
Yes.
Australian
That's
women like
great.
that. And I
That's
love
cool.
that because I know when I first got married, my mother-in-law was always like telling my husband, like, well, why is she going off again to, why
Without
is
you.
without you? And he'd be like, it's totally fine, Mom. She's gonna come back a very
She's good.
happy, free person, you
It's
know?
great for your relationship. Well,
Yes,
and I do a lot of relationship coaching and I do think like the idea that just one person would fulfill everything that we want is I feel like it's very unhealthy. And it's like these other connections are important. Exactly like you
right,
said, your husband said, like, she's going to go out and she's going to get recharged and refilled and she's going to come back. It's going to be great. And especially if he recognizes I don't enjoy those things,
right,
I don't like to do it that way. You know what? Let's have a great marriage by allowing the other person to go do something they love
right.
without me there. And I actually started doing, because I'm not in a relationship right now, I started doing like a little solo vacation, thanks to my family being willing to watch my
Oh,
kids.
good.
And I would just go away for a few days. And it's like, so far I've done a lot of nothing. Like I worked on creative projects, I did some reading, I just took it easy. I like Lego. I like Star Wars and
Yeah.
Lego. So I built myself a Star Wars X-Wing Lego one
Oh,
time.
cool.
And that was it. And it was just like, okay, that was fun. I've never done that again, but I loved it. I had fun. And no one was demanding my time. No one was saying, what are you gonna, can you come take care of this? Can you feed me? Can you do this? And it was like I could eat whenever I wanted and just all the stuff that I think is really important and that ability to just go enjoy yourself, enjoy something that you love. Because I realize that travel is one of the things I love to do. Like
Right.
it is absolutely one of the things that just I love about life. And it's like, oh, that's an expensive hobby to have.
Yeah.
um, and you can't always up and go and do all those things with, with the kids around and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But realizing like, okay, but when I do make these things happen, it just lights up my world exactly like you said. And it's like, okay, this is so rich in in the way it nourishes my soul and my life.
Right,
And
right.
there's so much beauty in it that I'm just, it's like, yeah, I would do way more of it
Yes.
if I could.
Well, and that's why I think, as bad as, and I know a lot of podcasters don't like to bring up COVID, but I think it
Yeah.
was a great reset for also for, especially for Americans and
Yeah.
our jobs and our idea of that work-life balance. I think it had gotten
Yes.
completely out of kilter, and
Very much.
it wasn't until we had this, I kind of like to think of it as a great reset, I hope, for a lot of families, because there were
Yes.
relationships that didn't make it.
Hmm.
Honestly, it was sad. And people realized, oh my gosh, I didn't know all this about my partner. We were fine if we didn't see each other eight.
Right.
I mean, some
Right.
people, if you're working an 8-hour day, but you're living in LA and driving an hour to work, an
Yes.
hour to get home, your day is done. You're not really
Yeah.
spending what, maybe 1 or 2 days a week
To
with
act. Yeah. Yeah.
these people.
Hardly any time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And now I think employers too are realizing that people need to have some time to
Yes.
themselves, and what that can look like, and how having happy employees, you're gonna,
It's huge. So I was in tech before, so I've now started my own business with my sister, but before that, I was in the chatbot industry for like 16 years and I was remote the entire time. The entire time. And one of the first thoughts I had like week 3 into COVID, I was like, one of the best things that's going to come out of this is that companies are going to begin to realize that you do not have to police and micromanage your
yeah,
employees all the time for them to still do their work. You're also very quickly going to see who's doing their work and who isn't. And I, especially having been in that industry and then been a boss within my company, like I would rather people work 30 hours and like that 30 hours be the most powerful, impactful 30 hours because then you get innovation, you get these ideas, you get
yes,
whatever. Because if you have time to go take care of all the other stuff that's happening in your life, then you can come back and you can just like you went on that trip and came back and you're refreshed and
yeah,
happy and you get to show up as the partner you want to be
right,
as opposed to just doing the busy work and doing the drudgery work and if those things are pulling you down it's okay, you just spent this many hours in the office, you probably only got actual if you're there for an 8-hour day, you probably got 5 or 6 hours of work done.
right,
If you were to boil it down and cut stuff out, like when you're at home, when you're working remote, you could do all that same work in like 5, 6 hours. Then you add in the drive, then you add in that, and it's like,
yes,
okay, well, now I still have to do life maintenance. When
right.
have I set up my bills? Have I checked this? Have I done this thing? And or if you have kids, if you have another
Oh
person who's like,
yeah,
hey, they need my time, my pet needs all these different things, and it's like, okay, that makes it really hard. And I definitely feel very passionately, in case you couldn't tell, about companies that really value their employees and say, look, I want you to be such a healthy, whole version of yourself that
yeah,
you bring new ideas to the table, that you get your work done in half the amount of time
right,
because you're refreshed and you're actually contributing like cream of the crop type work as opposed to, oh, I just have to fill out this. I have to make sure I did X number of hours,
right,
or I
yeah,
have to suffer. If I'm not suffering in my job, then, and I'm like, okay, but how much better is it when we are feeling refreshed and energized?
right.
Like, and how much happier are our clients and this and this and this and
Yeah,
this
I
and all
just
these
think
other
there's
things.
a huge benefit, right? Because people
Agreed.
are, they're going to feel that more valued. I think that their employer understands that how important it is to take time
Yes.
away or work less hours or work
Yeah.
with their schedule. I think
Yeah.
it's huge.
Yeah, I agree. And I have seen for years, this is before COVID, people were talking already about what it looked like to have your employees work less hours,
Hmm.
but have them like be really impactful hours. And it was interesting because I've seen so many studies that are just like, that is the way to go. Like it is absolutely the way to go. Certain jobs I'm like, okay, can you do
Right.
that? Like certain factory things like that we're not going to get away. I don't know. Like that I'm like I don't know how that plays out, but um I look at those things I'm like, okay, so why are we not adapting more of these things? Or people would say, "Hey, yeah, you can do this," but then they still expect you to do a minimum of 40 hours. And I'm like, well, shifting shifting to 410s, that's a longer day. You're more drained at the end of those days. Is the day that you're not working enough for you to recover from it?
Right. Yeah, I don't
I don't know. I'm not
know.
entirely convinced. So I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, and that I think that's such an interesting thing that COVID had an impact on and that travel I think is something that for some of us anyway, it refreshes us and it's just like, ah, I can
Yes.
prevent burnout by having
Right.
a break and coming back with fresh like every time I went on vacation, every time I would go someplace and I'd come back and I would always have new ideas on how I could resolve like okay, we could do this. And it
Right.
was just like always this innovation and inspiration because I took a break.
Right.
Yeah,
Or
and because
going
I
somewhere, or
yeah,
yeah, just getting yourself into a new place, a new situation. You have fresh eyes
yeah,
to really look at things differently.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I agree. Totally agree.
So tell us, you said you had a book.
Yes, actually, it's right there. I wrote I wrote a book about divorce.
Oh.
It's called Blueprints for Divorce: An Act of Love, Sacrifice, and Redemption. And it's really focusing on helping people figure out if divorce is a healthy choice for them, specifically through a Christian lens, because so many people I know, and I consider myself Christian, um, this idea that it's like, well, you have to stay at any cost, which
Yeah.
is not actually in the Bible, but that's actually not biblical. But so I talk about that and just really leave it open. It's kind of at the end, it's a choose your own adventure. It's kind of like you want to stay, you want to move on. And so much of the stuff I put in there, I'm like, one day maybe I'll rewrite it to be like, okay, you're not married, but here's the stuff I wish I had known and understood about those relationships. And on the topic of travel, I talk about, I don't actually talk about travel, but I talk
Yeah.
about compatibility.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like, okay, you and your husband, like you have this compatibility and it doesn't apply to your travel world. And that's
Right.
okay
Right.
because we're compatible in all of these wonderful ways where we can partner. And you have a partner who trusts you to go do what you want to do without them.
Right.
And I mean, what a wonderful gift to have somebody who trusts you and who's like, yeah, you go do your thing. Like, you go have fun. I trust you that you're still going to love me when you come back.
Right. Exactly.
And, all these wonderful things and recognizes and values how it fills you up. Like that. I love that. So it's such a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
It
Yeah.
is beautiful. And I think finding someone that is compatible for a lot of people is a challenge. And some
Yes.
and it can apply to friends, it can apply to business relationships. So
Absolutely.
um, and unfortunately we do have whatever situation we were born into, familiar things
Yes.
and how that looked. And sometimes we think it has to look like that. And the truth is
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't.
It doesn't. Well, and that one of the things you had mentioned earlier when I was even thinking about this conversation with my family, it's like, it's really amazing that I can vacation with my family.
Right.
Um, and like, I mean, do we start to drive each other a little bit nuts after a few days? Yes. But we're all like, okay, we need space and we can say that.
Right.
And you can go have your space and you can go do like that ability to connect and value another human being and say, oh, well, that's not what I need, but I'm okay with that being what you need. I'm okay enough with myself for you to be yourself.
Right.
Like that to me is such a big deal. And that I know I feel like relationships are everywhere, everywhere. And the healthier we get around how we handle relationships opens up the world to us, not just to travel, but to
No,
all these
just oh
aspects of
yeah.
like, I can receive so much goodness from the world around me when I'm at peace to be me. And at peace for you to be you.
Right, right. And that is a
Yeah.
huge piece of it because I think it is beautiful that you do have a family that you can spend time with.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, I know situations where
Oh
even the
yeah.
idea as we get towards fall of that, even that Thanksgiving dinner of that, you know,
Yes.
there's that obligation piece of,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I should spend time with these people, but then there's also all of
Yes.
that awful baggage of, like
Well,
people that don't get along or
and
and
it
can't
makes
put
me,
aside their and that's what makes me sad is people can't just
yes.
let their siblings or their parents just be who they are. Don't worry
Yes.
about
It's like
fixing
it,
them or trying to put them into that box or trying to put them in that movie or Hallmark
yeah.
picture that we see because it doesn't work for everybody and that's
It's
okay.
it's letting go of that expectation that you have to meet my expectation and saying like, and really healthy people can make that space.
Right.
And like I find sometimes like the problems you're talking about, it's like, okay. Okay, for instance, my family, we began to realize like normally I would say most people would be like, oh, the Needhams, they're really direct. That's how most people would probably, if you knew one of us, they would say, oh, they're direct. And yet there's certain dynamics where we've been very passive aggressive.
Mm.
And as we became aware of that, like me and my siblings, like we were like, oh, we're not actually okay with this. Don't know where we picked that up from. But it was like we began practicing being direct and just being like, instead of saying things like at the Thanksgiving dinner, like
Right.
instead of saying something like, oh, do you want to get me a glass of water? Say, hey, would you please get me a glass of water? Like just
Oh
practicing
yeah.
small things and allowing that space to be like, I really don't want to hang out and play cards with everybody. I really want to go read my book.
Right.
And saying, okay, we love you enough for you to go ahead and go read your book. And we're okay that you don't want to be with us right now, but we're not going to assume that because of that you don't like us
Thank
or
you.
we're
Yes.
not we're not going to read all this meaning
Yes.
to into something that's just like, no, this is how I need some space for me.
Right.
And if I can't have some space for me, then you guys don't want to be around me because
Right,
I'm gonna
exactly.
I'm gonna get a little crank.
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
that and I really feel like so much is letting go of the expectation of like, I expect you to perform to my standard. And it's like, well, no, like what does it look like for me to love you where you're at and to just be okay with that? I don't know. Anyway,
No, I love
yes.
it. I love that you found what you're passionate about doing, it sounds like, with your new position,
Yeah,
new
pretty
business that
well.
you've created.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. And because of it, I've been really so I practice what I preach. And I thought, okay, what is it like? What do I say I want to do? I'm like, I want to travel. I want to do these things. And I was like, oh, hemming and hawing because I'm like, okay, you're still building this business. Like your income is not up to the level you want. And it was just like, but you know what is so like in alignment, in integrity for myself, with myself. I was like, you talk about traveling and doing these things and taking advantage of the flexibility that you have. For instance, the flexibility your job might have now post COVID.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to France for a month with the kids, 4
Nice.
full weeks. And it was just like, this is terrifying in some ways because it's like, you're going to be doing these things. You're not going to be fitting the normal boxes. You're not going to be working very much. And it was just like, and yet, how much does that actually align with everything that I say that I wants to live fully present? I want to live engaged in the moment. And it's like, okay, go live with it. Don't just wait. Don't just wait about those trips. Don't just second guess it. Um, Go put a Google flight alert on some place that
Yes,
you want to go
exactly.
to and start watching. And when it pops up, book it. Just
I
go do
agree.
it.
I
Go
agree.
do it.
And don't put the roadblocks in of like, oh, well, when I achieve this or when I make this amount of money. I continually say that
Yeah.
we're in a world now with so many ways to travel. There's so many ways to
Yes.
travel on a budget or find places to go, even if it's just the next state over.
Yeah.
Do some research and treat yourself to a weekend away if that's what it is for now and that's what you can afford. But do it.
Yes. That's a great
Don't
point.
wait. And or if you have friends
Yes.
or family that you've been wanting to see, figure it out. Go visit
Go do
them.
it.
Yeah, go do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my kids are so funny because we've done a lot more stateside traveling. So we've been to I don't know how many states we've been to now. And we'll go stay with friends and family and stuff. And
Yeah.
so if it's been a few months, they'll be like, "Mom, when can we go on a plane again? When are we gonna
Oh,
fly
really?
somewhere again?" Oh yes. Like I've been getting the grumblings from
Oh.
they're like, "Mom, why are you?" I went on a trip in February with my mom, just a short weekend one. And the kids were like, "Why are you getting to go on a plane, but we're not getting to go on a plane?" Like, what?
Oh, no.
Yes, exactly. So I was like, I think you've created little travel monsters
Right, exactly, oh dear.
in all the best ways, of course.
Right,
But yes,
exactly.
it's so funny. They're like, but France has appeased them.
Oh,
Like the
good.
thought of going to, they're like, oh, well, that's pretty good. And since we're not going to Paris, the possibility of popping over into Barcelona,
Oh,
into
wow.
Spain has been like, they're like, okay, well, maybe we could handle not going to. My daughter wants to go to Paris. My son, he doesn't care. He's just like, give me the beach. It's all I want.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so yes, so the small rewards of other countries and cities.
Well, and giving them time to think ahead and get excited about it, I
Yes.
think helps too. Like, we're not going to do X this week because we're going to say, I know as a kid, that was a huge
Yeah.
motivator. It's like we didn't grow up with
Yes.
a lot, but my parents were always adamant about that summer vacation. So it was always like
Yes.
we had months to like get excited,
Yes.
go do a little research, which back then was like go to the library
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
get some
Very different.
magazines.
They're
Yeah,
always like, just Google it, Mom. Just Google it. And
right.
I'm like, you guys have no idea how easy this is for like so
Right.
I've been doing that very thing with them with the trip. Like I'll talk like I don't talk to them too much about it just because like sometimes you can tell they're like, we're done
Yeah.
talking about it, Mom. But I'll be like, hey, we're gonna go to this city. And I'll just look up the city and like this is where this is at. And they're like, wow, that's really cool. And
Oh,
they start getting really excited about it. And so it's neat. It's
yeah,
very neat.
that is
Yeah.
neat. Oh, I've
Yeah.
so enjoyed
Great.
talking to you, Rachel. So tell
Yes. You too,
everyone
April.
where they can find your website, where they can find out
Yes.
more about you if they're interested.
Yes, absolutely. So my website's pretty easy. It's rachelneedham.com. It's Rachel, Rachael, like Michael, Needham, like I need some ham.
Oh, nice.
You can imagine what third grade was like for me. Like,
Yeah.
Rachel, you need some ham.
Oh no.
Yes. Yes, I do. I do. Okay, fine. RachelNeedham.com. And then my company with my sister is Remarkably Luminous.
Oh,
I will
nice.
not try and spell that. .com, but you can get to it from my website. So yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
thanks
good.
for letting me share that. That's very
Oh, of
kind.
course. Well, we'll put that in the show notes too. So
Yes.
people
Yay.
want to get your book and find out more about you and
Yeah, I
connect.
would love that.
That would be
One of my
fabulous.
favorite scenes in my book is I open with a scene from when I lived in southern France. And I'm like, I love this. And I was like, probably because you're like under the southern French summer sun. And I was like,
Oh,
whatever. I don't think that's exactly what I said, but I was like, yeah, okay, I love France. I love
yes.
France. I should have wore French colors today or something.
Oh,
I didn't think
yeah,
about it.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be excited to hear back from you when you get back from the summer
Yes.
adventure.
Oh,
Sounds
yeah. I'll
good.
have to give you an update.
Give me an
Yeah,
update. We can do
I
an
will for
episode
sure.
about
Oh, that'd be
taking
fun.
taking the kids and planning it, all of that, and how it worked out.
Yes, I've been working on my route. I've been like, okay, we'll go here, then we'll go here, then we'll go here, then we'll do this, then we'll do this. And I'm like, we can stay with these people, we stay with these
Yeah,
people, and we'll rent a place, and we'll do the like all the things, all the things. It's gonna be great.
love it. Well, thank you so much,
Yes,
Rachel.
thank you, April.
Check the show notes for Rachael Needham, and we'll be talking again soon. So thanks.
Yes, thanks. Great. Bye.